and today we got to play Season. Season is a card drafting, dice drafting, a little bit with Take That type of card game, also a little bit of resource management. So let's see what we like about it. But first, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you would like to see the different games that we review. If you have any requests, look down at the comment section, add your thoughts, your feelings towards this game, maybe some other ones that we should look at.
Let me know what other games you enjoy in this genre or any other genre or you'd like to see reviewed.
Yep, so absolutely. So tell us more about the game, Randy.
So it has a Board Game Geek rating of 7.4. It's 2 to 4 players, and it's supposed to average 60 minutes long, depending on who you're playing with.
Yeah, of course. Right.
The publisher is Libelud. Designer is Regis Bonacy, and he is also one of the artists, along with Xavier Guineffe Durin and Stephanie Gontiez. That's all I got for it.
Okay, so let's dive into quality of pieces. So you've got a lot of cardboard resource tokens.
They are textured.
But really the only difference between the different resources is the actual picture on them. They're all circle shaped.
And the colors.
And the colors. But that's kind of on purpose due to that they're supposed to fit in the little grooves on the actual player board. The player board is a pretty basic cardboard.
Also textured.
And then you also have the circular timing mechanism for the game.
Yeah, it's the calendar. It's got 12 months on it, and they're broken into seasons appropriately enough.
I wonder where that came from. And then the card quality, we actually sleeved these because of the amount of shuffling.
Yeah, there's a lot of shuffling. They are not textured. They're decent thickness, but they're not textured. Yeah. So
it's probably why you sleeve them. And then the dice.
They're big, oversized dice.
I like the fact that they're big and oversized, but they are kind of plain. I don't know. It's just.
Well, they have the symbols. I mean, they do the job. They got everything they need on them.
I don't know. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
They got little wooden cubes.
Oh, well, those are
basic. But the colors are kind of unique. But
they have purple. They do get a bonus
point
orange,
for that. A yellowish green, and a gray, which are kind of colors you don't see as the common colors in games.
Yeah, so I thought those were kind of nice. Overall quality, I'm going to give this a 7. I think everything's okay. It's all functional. Nothing's wrong with it per se. Is there anything absolutely outstanding with this? I don't think so.
No, there's not. I mean, 7's probably generous, but it's
and
decent.
It's purple.
I mean,
you got to remember.
It's got purple. It's got. I mean, the texture is nice on the cardboard. But there's just we got a scoreboard we didn't mention too. There's just not anything outstanding. The dice are pretty cool, but you know, like you said, they are kind of plain. But I think that's good. You know, it gives the information it needs, and it doesn't have clutter. It's clear what they are. So I think 7's fine. As far as theme goes, it's kind of a whimsical, magical theme. I really like the characters. I love my pumpkin.
I think the art for this is absolutely gorgeous. I love the artwork with it. I think it's beautiful. You know, with Seasons, you generally think, oh, this is going to be nature. But no, it's like a mystical, like the seasons bring in energy, and that energy is used to do the cards. Like, I thought that was actually a pretty interesting take. So you get a little bit of fantasy when you're expecting more of a nature game. And so I thought that was actually a really unique concept.
Right. Well, all the energy comes from the different, like, earth, wind, fire, and water, and air. That's earth, wind, fire, and water.
Oh, I said wind twice.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So yeah, but it's the 4 basic elements. So it's pretty cool that they use that and they combine it with the calendar system for allocating. I think they did a really good job integrating that with the magic elements that you get in the game. As far as you get the different cards, you got 2 types. You've got the magic of the amulets, and then you have the magic of the peoples.
Yeah, item and peoples.
Yeah. So
I think that was an interesting take on it. What would you give it a score wise though?
I think it's 7. It's not real heavy. It's not super heavy and integrated, but it is integrated. And I think it's a clever mechanism with the seasons going around the calendar. I really think, that obviously that was their main focus, but they probably came up with that first and added the rest later is my guess. But that's a clever play as far as when you move out of a season, you change dice. I thought that was neat.
Yeah. So what would you give it as a score?
I said 7.
7. I am actually going to give it a little bit more because the artwork is so fantastic. I'm going to give this a 7.5 because the artwork is so great. So that's where I'm at with that one. So moving on to rules.
The rules aren't too bad. The rules are pretty straightforward. There are no cheat sheets, which I always like to see cheat sheets, but in this it's not that. I mean, the cards are pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. Although, yeah.
But they do have They do have in the back a reference for most of the cards, if not all of them. There's a ton of references here. And it's pretty straightforward. It does its job well. I mean, it's not. I would rather have seen something a little better on the back, as far as if you weren't going to have a cheat sheet, to have this a little more descriptive on the back. But it does have some of the basic stuff on the back. But there's still a lot of references. Some of the confusing parts is the names of the different types of cards, and then you have to go back and remember what is the card referencing when you go back, as far as like the amulets, is that what they call that, or what do they call the people? There's a little bit of referencing to that I think is confusing.
Well, it's like crystals in this is victory points, right? And you got to remember that. And then energy is the resource tokens, right? Which is typically energy. You think of something different than the resources. So that one kind of threw me off a little bit at the beginning, because I was like, wait, what? For some reason that terminology didn't quite click. When you compare it to other games, but once you get in the concept of this context, it works out fine. But having a cheat sheet wouldn't have been bad to kind of...
Yeah, I mean, just the terminology. It's not so much the gameplay, just the terminology.
Yeah,
cheat sheets,
that's really where it is.
Because the cards reference it, and then you have to go look in the book. What does that mean? And it didn't take long to pick it up. Once again, we've played this many times, but we haven't played it in a long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 7.5. I think it would have been an 8 if it had a little bit easier access to terminology.
Yeah, I agree with that. So moving on to gameplay. So gameplay, there you get 12 cards, and you draft... Nine
cards.
Sorry, can't do math. 9 cards, and you draft them, one at a time around the table. And then you end up dividing them into 3 different years. So you get 3 cards for each of the years. So you have to plan for all 3 years at the very beginning of the game. So you want to place those out. And then once you do that, you take your first year's cards and you begin rolling. You start at the time marker of
January of year 1. You have 3 years.
Yeah. So in the round, the starting player rolls the dice, and then the dice drafting occurs. So everyone drafts a dice. There is 1 left over. Based on the pips on that dice is how far that the clock advances. And then first player also goes to the next player. But after you do your dice drafting, you get the benefits from the dice. Then you can opt to play a card. Now, with this is you actually have to increase your card capacity.
Yeah.
So at the start of the game, you don't have any capacity for any cards. Basically, you can't hold any magical items or anything else like that, unless you get something from the dice roll, which is a star, is their symbol for it. And so you have to build that up first before you have the opportunity to play cards. And cards, I think, are not the only scoring mechanism, but it's pretty significant in the capacity. So you really need to be able to play cards. So
yeah, and you have a limit of 15 in the game, but you start at 0, so you can't play any until you get that first star. So the stars at first, when we were playing this game, which is unusual, we got plentiful stars the first couple of rounds around, and then they got scarce. They went dry after that. So there's another option you have, which is each player has 4 actions on their board they can take up to 3 times during the game, but each time you take one, you get a victory point penalty. So one of the actions lets you get a free star. So if you're desperate and there's no dice rolling coming up with stars, you can always get it that way.
But that's really hard, because if your card's only worth 6 or 7 victory points and you're taking a 7 victory point hit, that's really rough. But at the same time, it might give you an ability that
the first one's a 5-point hit. The second one is 7 more on top of that, because it puts it to 12. And the next one is 8.
But I'm saying, just depending on where your level is, I mean, it can be quite costly, but the benefit may outweigh that negative penalty. For example, like I took one of my hits to sell all my resources because I was capped out for a bunch of victory points. for me, that was worth it because I ended up netting way more than I lost.
Yeah, so the different actions you can take are you can trade 2 of the different resource types for any other 2, which is important if you're trying to play a specific card and you need it down right away. The second one is, as you mentioned, trading, where there's an exchange rate based on the season. And I thought that was a really cool mechanism.
That was a neat mechanism.
Where the more scarce the resource is during a season, the more valuable it is to them because you can't get it on the dice necessarily. So during like winter, the what's the scarce one? The Earth is Earth is the scarce one. So if you're in that season and you've got a lot of Earth, and there's a circular symbol on some of the dice, but there's also the action you can take where you can just trigger it at a trade, and it gives you +1 exchange rate too. So that's really cool because then your 3s become 4s in worth value. And then the other one is that one of the sides of the dice has a card on it, which lets you get an extra card. And that's the only way to get more cards than the 9 you start with is by those dice. But this will let you draw 2 cards instead of just taking the top one. And you only get to keep 1 still, but at least it gives you your choice that way.
Yeah, I don't think that would be worth the victory
I don't think it's worth the victory point hit either, unless you're just desperately searching for a card.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty rough. But overall, I think there are a lot of interesting mechanisms to this game, and it's actually what's funny is you brought it out, you said we played it again, and I couldn't remember it until towards the end of the game. I was like, oh yeah, it's all
I thought the art is so memorable. I thought you would have remembered it right away.
Well, it's been a while, and you make me play a new game every single night. It's
I didn't make you play a new one this time.
So, but yeah, so that's kind of the thing but it is fantastic. Score-wise, what would you give it?
I mean, it's really cool. First of all, it also has a built-in expansion in it. So we played with the basic 30 cards, but there's 20 additional cards, and it's two cards each, so 40 more cards in the box that you can mix and mingle into this. And then there's also an add-on expansion we've never even opened yet. But this is just the base game we played. But it comes. I appreciate when games come with their own built-in expansion. That adds more replayability to it. But this game is just a lot of fun. It's very easy to teach, and it's just a fun game. As far as a score, I'm going to have to give this, I think, an 8.5. I think that's where I'm at on it. It's a really good game to get out if you have people that aren't really heavy into gaming, but you want to play something that's a little more, advanced as far as some of the mechanics in it. This is a good game. It's not hard to teach those mechanics.
I don't know. I mean, it'd be hard. I couldn't see teaching some of the people that are kind of at that beginner level this game, because of so many mechanisms to manage in this. I mean, I would consider this a light to medium game.
I think it's definitely a light to medium. I don't think it's entry level, but it is a light to medium game, and it's one that's easy to get to the table and explain. I mean, we didn't have to work hard to explain it to your dad last night.
Yeah, well, I think the steps are easy. Okay, it's like, okay, right now we're doing card drafting. All right, once that's done, divide it up.
Yeah.
So the way it's broken out, there's a lot of mechanisms involved, but they're at certain junctures, and so it's easy to kind of get people through that piece. So overall, though, I think I like it a little bit less than you, not by much. I think I would give this an 8. I forgot how much fun this is, and I'm really kind of ashamed that it's kind of gotten forgotten on our shelves, because I do like trying to pair up the cards. And I'm not okay with you beating me this go around, so I definitely want to get this back out and try again, because now that I actually remember this game.
That is another thing, is there is a lot of ways to score in this. And I always appreciate that too. It's not one trick pony as far as scoring. The cards are one way. During the game, you can trade in victory points to get it. You can steal them from your opponents, as I found out painfully last game.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, in the end, my initial plan worked out. I had my 30-pointer set up at the very end where I could play it for free. That's established, and then I got another lucky draw where I got to play one for free, and I drew the other 30-pointer. So I got to play both of those cards, and that really is what pushed me over.
Oh, you got to play a card for free.
Both times. That's how I always try to set it up. If I can get that 30-pointer and one that lets me play a card for free, I always pair them up and put them in the last season.
The one I only saw where you got to play for free.
There were 2 cards that let you do it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, lots of fun. We appreciated it quite a bit. What do you guys think about it? Yeah. Well, we'll see you guys later. You have a good night. Bye.
Bye.